Ooh, wasabi guys, coming back at you with another top 10. This time we're going to go over the top 10 Grixis cards in Commander. Now please keep in mind, as we look at the bottom of the list here, we're going to just see cards that are in here because they're Grixis colored, and I thought they were good enough to put on the list. But as we move forward, you're going to see a significant increase in power, just overall presence in the format. So keep that in mind as we move on here. Let's get started. Number 10, Mishra, Artificer Prodigy. Probably the most specific to build around out of any commander that I have on this list here. Definitely a head scratcher at first if you don't know what he does and you don't know how to build around him. Basically, you just use something like a Nether Void, or you use something like a Possibility Storm, or similar things that interact with the cast trigger. If you can fool around with it and then be able to cast something from your hand after it either counters it or it interacts with it in some way, shape, or form of the cast trigger, then you can get whatever artifact you wanted to cast and just play it, whereas other people will struggle to cast their spells. So it's definitely something you could make a stacks build around. I don't advise typically around building stacks unless you're, unless you really want the hate, but Grixis artifact builds just aren't really a thing in Commander other than Mishra, so it's definitely interesting just to see this as a presence in the format at all. I think certainly not my number one choice as a Grixis commander, just because he's so hard to build around, requires a lot of money and a lot of cards that you need to really just make the combos work or anything like that. You just need to have enough tutors, enough ways to get to your combo pieces or anything in general, because that's what you need to play with Mishra. Number 9, I have Slave of Bolus, basically a more expensive active treason, although it's better than active treason because at the end step it sacrifices the creature rather than just giving it back to them at the end step. So that is a huge bonus. However, it is 5 mana to do this, so there is better removal in the format. I think for 5 mana it's a bit more expensive, but as I said, cards that are on this list are not necessarily the best cards. They're just on here because they're in Grixis colors, and I think they're good enough to be on the list. Number 8 here we have Cruel Ultimatum. Doesn't see as much play, but its ability is pretty good here. You can have target opponent sacrifice a creature, they discard 3 cards and lose 5 life. You return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, and then you gain 5 life. So basically, they do the opposite of what you're doing. They lose a lot, you gain a lot. So that right there it's pretty significant of an advantage that you're giving yourself. Main downside here is that it is super specific in the mana cost here. Coming up with all colored mana, there's no colorless here, so you have to have good mana fixing, or this type of card is most likely not going to be on your radar. It's another example yet again how it's going to be a lot harder to find cards for 3 color. And a lot of the time the cards here, they may be really good, but they have a huge drawback and they just don't see a lot of play because of that. But they're Grixis colored nevertheless. Number 7, we have Thraximundar, a very popular commander for a while, sort of fallen from grace, not really that big of a deal. People have been looking for more complex interactions between their commanders and their opponents, and Thraximundar is very good as a creature in this format still. Whenever you attack, opponent sacrifices a creature. Having that trigger is very good, and putting a +1/+1 counter on him that interacts with another commander on this list. So even if he's not a commander himself, as part of the 99, definitely an option. He plays well if you want to make a Grixis zombie build around him. Not the worst option, but there still are better options. Number 6, I have Cedrus the Traitor King. My personal favorite option if you wanted to build the type of Grixis zombie deck. Giving all your creatures in your graveyard unearth is amazing, and having recursion in Commander as a format period is always awesome. However, doesn't really seem to do anything outside of that to really diversify the zombie builds other than just being Grixis. I feel being a zombie, having that type of ability is awesome and not extremely competitive, and the interaction is limited to just the unearth mechanic. If he did more than that, I would probably consider moving him up, but unfortunately that's what he is. Number 5, we have Marchesa, the Black Rose. Definitely one of my favorite options in Grixis colors. And there are combos associated with her, especially with sack triggers. You can fool around with persist, and if you have a sack outlet and Marchesa the Unhallowed, you can go with a ton of different combos. However, I feel that if you wanted to make the more fair, just a Grixis based combat build, there are a ton of creatures that synergize with +1/+1 counters in these colors enough to warrant playing her as a commander. Personally, my favorite of the two versions of Marchesa, definitely giving all your creatures dethrone. It's one of those mechanics you don't see a lot of, and it's very limited because Conspiracy was that type of set where you had unique keywords and you're probably never going to see them again outside of Conspiracy. Who knows, if they make a new Conspiracy set, they might actually consider doing it, repeating keywords, but again, it's so limited to what we have here. Marchesa the Black Rose, however, being able to give other creatures dethrone helps to deal with any sort of problems you might have with consistency. So giving other creatures dethrone definitely helps with any consistency problems there. Number 4, we have the newest addition here, even though we technically don't have him right now as the making of this video, Bolus God Pharaoh. I mean, you can expect that he's going to be on this list right away. We can already predict he's going to see play in Super Friends. It's a sure thing. He's just that awesome. However, I don't have him higher and over the other Bolus, which I'll get to later, for the main reason because his first two abilities are they're not as precise. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they reveal a non-land card and you may cast it without paying its mana cost. I mean, anything's good on a plus, but it just doesn't seem to be as precise and predictable. And each opponent exiling 2 cards from their hand is nice. However, you're going to run into many situations where an opponent doesn't have any cards in their hand, or they have a ton of cards in the hand to where exiling 2 cards is not that big of a deal. So hand disruption is never really that big of a deal in Commander, unless it's dual Commander 1v1. I find that to be the case. But in a casual 4-player game, you're going to run into issues where this isn't going to be as big of a hit as you might think it is, but I like the options on the pluses nevertheless. And dealing 7 damage to a creature or player is, I mean, it's decent removal that hits a lot of creatures in this format still. Even though it is a bigger format with bigger creatures, you can still expect 7 damage to have an impact in the removal game, or just burning someone straight up for 7's never really bad anyway. And the ult is obviously probably the best part about him. Exiling all non-land permanents your opponent's control is just absolutely devastating, and it's most likely going to put you in a very good position to where you have an extremely high percentage of winning the game you're in. Number 3, I have Krause's Charm. You can return a permanent to its owner's hand, destroy a non-black creature, or destroy an artifact. I always go for versatility and precision when I choose my top cards, unless if a card is just so awesome it just ranks over it. But this is one of those cards that out of all the charms, I think this is the most underrated one. People tend to think about Bant Charm or Esper Charm when they talk about the best ones. I always look at Krause's Charm because you have versatility. Returning a permanent to its owner's hands, not that big of a deal in the format, but it could definitely open you up for, it can always open you up for other opportunities. You can destroy a non-black creature, well, that's a lot of creatures, or you could just destroy an artifact straight up. So you have different ways of dealing with non-creature permanents. You have a way of dealing with non-black creatures. It's good versatility, and it's instant speed, so can't go wrong. Number 2, I have the original Bolus Planeswalker, and quite frankly, he wins out even though he's 8 mana and has the double black there. I still feel that he wins out over Bolus God Pharaoh, just for the sole reason that he has precision on his plus. His plus, being able to destroy a non-creature permanent, is amazing, and it just, you know what you're getting out of it. His minus, gaining control of a creature, I mean, that's another form of precision there. You're dealing with a creature, or you're dealing with a non-creature permanent and its plus. His ult is basically Cruel Ultimatum, where if you pull it off, you're just going to give yourself a huge advantage over one player, and you're most likely going to be able to hate them out of the game at that point. While Bolus God Pharaoh has more abilities and more options, I just feel that the original has precision, and I do tend to go for precision more often than not over just randomness if it means more stuff. I mean, precision, you can't go wrong. Number 1, the best Grixis colored card in Commander is Nekasar, without a doubt, in my opinion. When you talk about just how frequently he sees play, because Nekasar is one of those commanders that has altered the paradigm of just your typical deck. Alternative win cons are always a thing in this format, and burn isn't that much of a thing other than what Nekasar does. Nekasar builds are basically burn and commander. When you alter the paradigm and you have an alternative win con that's so unique like this, where you can just build your entire deck around it and maybe put some Grixis control cards in there as well, but for the most part you're going to be putting wheel type effects, Howling Mine type of effects like Underworld Dreams, where everybody just starts getting dealt massive amounts of damage. You can even throw in something like a Liliana's Caress or a Megrim, and suddenly everybody's taking massive amounts of damage just over a short period of time, and it's very, very quick how easy it is for him to win if you just leave him alone. But the builds for this deck, just the awesomeness that you can throw into a Nekasar deck. You can throw in a Time Spiral, you could throw in a Wheel and Deal. There's just a lot of good cards here, and it's such a unique deck that is unlike a lot of other decks, and I feel that it's good, but it's not oppressive. It's kind of fair, but it's extremely enjoyable to both play with and against. So that's why he's number 1 on this list. I feel he's good at what he does, but he's not going to completely oppress your opponents like Leovold was, and I feel just a very good commander. And even if he's not your commander, you can throw him into something like a Yidris or any sort of 4-color combination with the partners that you can do from that Commander 2016 deck, where you could play Wheel and Deal type of effects and Howling Mine cards and basically anything like that. So not only is he a good commander, but he's pretty good as one of the 99. So anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I do other top 10s. Check those out if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Void Mage Gaming here, signing off. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.